basically, I'll just give a brief of Kali Linux. So as you are aware, it is a Linux distribution, and mainly it is using for different security analysis purpose. So the basic question we'll have like, what is the difference this between a normal Ubuntu or a Red Hat version and Kali Linux? So basically, the difference is nothing but it's every it's like Ubuntu. It is a Debian version, but the advantage is that in this particular version, people are use multiple security tools and customize and package as a single bundle. So if you are installing Kali Linux, by default, all the open source security tools presently available today, it is available with us for our experiment, and we need not separately install or configure it. So this is the basic advantage of Kali Linux, why people are using for the security analysis. Otherwise, you can use it as a normal Linux machine. Whatever commands are available in Linux, also available in Kali Linux. But advantage is that if you are specific to a vulnerability assessment or security research or computer forensics or reverse engineering, these type of things require a lot of tools which might not by default come with any other operating system like Ubuntu or Red Hat. So if you're going for a Kali Linux, we'll get all these tools as a bundle. So you can use it as a normal Linux machine, and on top of that, we can use it for a different security analysis purpose. And similar to that, multiple what you call distributions are there. One distribution is like Parrot OS is also there. Then Backtrack is also providing their own the solution as a security things. Multiple solutions are there, but most of the time people are using Kali Linux because the update is very frequent and it is more popular nowadays. It is started in 2013, so keeping on their updating and different versions they are generating. So this is just a brief of Kali Linux. Then as I mentioned, it's more than 600 vulnerability assessment or penetration tools. And on top of that, it's an open source free charge. And another advantage is that since we are using a normal Linux distribution, as an attacking purpose or analysis purpose, somebody may target or some vulnerability may affect our machines also. So especially in wireless scenario, this Kali Linux is customized kernel and it has some of the patch available for injection. So it might not be that much easy to break our operating system while we are doing this activity. And it is already developed in a secure environment. It's like any other Linux, it's a multi-language support, and it will provide some type of customizability also. And if you want to use Kali Linux, I think you already installed it. The one advantage is that we need not install it in our machine. Suppose if you already have a Windows machine or Linux machine, on top of that, installing another machine, it's creating a partition and all, those headache is not required because it's providing as a bootable CD or USB drive. So you can just connect that CD or USB drive, and without installing in our hard disk, we can use it as a live system. So this is one option available. And second part is that there is an ISO available. And another advantage that if you have already a virtual machine installed on top of your operating system, there is a virtualized component is also available like VMware or VirtualBox or ARM images. We can just install this as a separate operating system. And nowadays, it is providing an option like Kali NetHunter. It is a mobile penetration testing platform for Android devices. So even in Android, also the same what you call features are available as a separate bundle. So I just brush up on some of the security aspects, then we'll go to the discussion on those things. I think morning they covered some of this bulk suit and web application scenario. So if you simply see a scenario like this, why security is important and all. So there are three angles in any security, any solution like security, functionality, and ease of use. When we develop a solution, then we want more functionality, and we want to provide a user to use it very easily. And on top of that, we want to provide a security. So most of the time what happens means our concentration more on functionality and ease of use. So we are away from the security. So the point is that if you are providing more secure, then somebody will complain that that system is not easy to use. I'll give a simple examples like in our SBI account, we may have a password. So they will say you cannot reuse your past 20 passwords because they are keep track of those passwords. And in that aspect, it's providing security, but as a user point of view, it's not that much easy to use a machine which we want to remember 20 password previous things. So those type of things, it's creates some issue for a normal user, but it is secure. And same way, if you're providing more functionality to a system, there is a chance that any of those functionality can be compromised and the security can be finally compromised. So our interest is to balance these. This is our target. Interest is to balance this. It should provide security, it should provide ease of use, and it should provide functionality. If I move this ball towards any of this angle, then it is away from other two. So this is a generic security aspect. So in this session also, we should take care like once we are using the tools, you should not tamper the present laws. Provided like if you are doing a simple scanning, we may be trying to learn it, but the problem is that it's in the IT Act point of view, it's a but legally is not valid. And even recently, Government of India also released a order. Those who are taking this type of security analysis and all, and we have to get a what you call declaration for the user, like we are not going to use it as a malicious things. So this very recently, I think 2 months back, Government of India has announced that. So in that context, in this section also, when we are discussing about Kali Linux and all, we can experiment this in a limited environment, especially like a LAN or those type of things. But the same tool will work in a wide environment like internet, but it may have tampers other data or other information or compromise some confidentiality of others. So that is not what you call that in the legal aspect is not valid. So when we discuss about this to students also, this is one point usually we'll discuss before the section. Any tools which we can use it, it's a positive side and negative sides. So if somebody is using it negative side, then it's not as part of the legal what you call the framework. It is not valid. So this is one context we will before starting the session we'll discuss, because multiple tools are there in Kali Linux which can be used for different malicious activities also. So in any stage of hacking or analysis, this is the common stages people will say: reconnaissance, scanning, gaining access, retaining, and covering tracks. So this in a general scenario, it's understanding the system. So from the outside, so we'll do some reconnaissance. We'll after that we'll understand what is exact machine. So we'll directly interact with that machine. So it will come under scanning. Then we'll get some access. So that stage is known as gaining access. Finally, once we got the access, we want to retain that access for some activity. So this is a retaining access. Once we retaining access and we use that machines, which is unauthorized to use, we may cover the tracks, we will delete all the logs and all. So this is a traditional sequence of hacking. In this context, what we are going to do discuss mainly today is that first two part, reconnaissance and to some extent scanning also. This we are doing for a positive purpose, like it can be used for identifying issues in our network. It can be used for identifying the other like diagnosis purpose. So we'll mainly discuss in the positive side of these two first stages, like reconnaissance and scanning. Okay, so I think I'll directly go to the Kali Linux. What I did is that on top of my Windows machine, I installed Kali Linux in VirtualBox. Okay, so I'm running this Kali Linux in the VirtualBox machine. So I can use Windows as well as Kali in the same machine. So I installed as a host, what you call a virtual host in the Microsoft Windows operating system. And once you are installing, we will get a what you call a prompt like to enter username and password. So I'm just using the default username. It is Kali, and the password is also Kali. As per the security point, it is not correct practice to use the same what you call the very weak password. But for demo purpose, I'm using it the same username and password. We have to change it after the installations. Okay. So once you install I'm not explaining the installation steps, but it's very simple. You can get this from the particular site, and there are multiple options available. You can copy as an ISO image, or you can copy as a virtual box. Multiple options are there, or you can install it as a standalone operating system also. So I installed on top of the Windows machines. So I'm demonstrating in that aspects. Okay. So once you're logged in, we'll get a prompt like any Linux machine. So this is what we'll going to get. So I'll just show the basic features. So this is what the Kali Linux desktops look like. So similar to that, we will get a button here. Like in Windows, we will get all these application things. So you can see a difference here. Like in Windows or Linux, we will get applications like MS Office or similar things. But here you can see the difference in these categorizations. So first one is the information gathering. Second one is vulnerability analysis, web application analysis, database assessment, password attacks, wireless attacks. Like this, they are nicely organized the tools available in open source as a package in the Kali Linux. This is what we are as a user, we are going to get an advantage. So under information gathering, if you are clicking, you will get n number of tools which is used by the security analyst or hackers for information gathering. For example, if I click information gathering, I'll get a DNS analysis section. Then under DNS analysis, what are the tools available for DNS analysis that also nicely organized. One is the DNS enumerator, then DNS reconnaissance component. FireCI is another DNS related analysis tools. Like that, they are nicely organized these tools. So if a user required, or in this case, a user, I am mentioning a expert who want to analyze the security or a ethical hacker. So those type of user want to use any tools, it will be directly available from the applications. And based on his requirement, you can select the tools in that category. So otherwise, if I'm using a Ubuntu and all, I'll get an application like normal traditional OS applications. So in that, if I want to install a particular tool, then I have to install apt-get or yum or whatever that package manager, or I have to install manually. So in this case, that installation is not required because by default it's coming as a bundled package. So all the tools are available here. So this is one advantage, or this is what basically Kali Linux is providing, other than the normal Linux machines. So if somebody's already used Linux, you'll be able to get the terminal. So we can give all those commands available in Linux also, like ls or mkdir, whatever commands available in Linux kernel, it is available in Kali. So a person want to work with Linux, on top of that you want to analyze some security, Kali Linux is one of the best solution because you can work as a normal Linux user as well as all the tools also available. So this is one plus point while comparing with other solutions or other tools in the security aspects. So information gathering, as I told in the first sequence, we'll get a different tools which will gather the information, and it is organized in such a way that based on the protocol or based on the application category. For example, one is the DNS. DNS, as you already know, it is a domain name system which will map into the domain information. So once you're getting the IP address and if there is a domain mapping or reverse also, in that case, if you're getting a domain, for example, www.cdac.in, there is an IP address mapped along with that domain. So in this case, once you're getting an IP address as a hacker or as a security analyst, you will be able to gain more information from the network, like what class of network it is, and what is the number of course part and number of this what you call the network part allocated. So you can do a guesswork like how big that organization may be. This type of information we can get as a like a or a security analyst point if you are getting a IP address of the remote machine which we are not aware. For example, if you are getting a IP address from CDAC, you may what you call that, able to get more information rather than the simple CDAC.in domain. So this is what in the reconnaissance is mainly looking. We need not interact with the system directly. How we will gain information from the perimeter of the system or perimeter of the organization, and there are entries like DNS entries available all over the world. If you want to query it, it is not a malicious thing. Anybody can query that website, like who is type of websites. So this is one information gathering options are available. And second part, you can check it. Once you identify an organization, then our interest is to look into, is there any security measurement they have taken, IDS or IPS. So this type of tool will check that option also. Then live host identification. Once you identify the application target or our organization itself, we want to know how many machines are up and what are the operating system they're running. Those information also provided here. The next part, we want to get it in a network, how many machines are there, what are the application they are running. Those information is also available as a reconnaissance output. So network and port scanners is part of the reconnaissance output. Then open source intelligent analysis, routing analysis. In this case, server message block is a Windows specific information like NBT scan and all. So these Windows domain, those type of information also part of the information gathering. Then mail information is one of the resource, what you call security analyst will use it for understanding a domain. What is a mail ID and how it is organized. All those things also coming under SMTP analysis. Then server simple network monitoring protocols like SNMP. Many of these devices are configured with SNMP for getting these details. So we can do the SNMP scan also to understand some of these basics of the network and their environment. Then nowadays everything is almost all the topics are encrypted. So using SSL or TLS. So those type of analysis also can be done using the tool provided by Kali Linux. It's coming under SSL analysis. Then other tools are there. So if you see these tools organized, you can see some of the tools may be mapped into multiple things. For example, the tool like Nmap may be in information gathering as well as in vulnerability assessment also. So the reason is that this tool can be a multi-purpose. So it can be used as an information gathering tool, or it can be used as a vulnerability analysis tool. And some tool will provide a web application analysis. I think morning session you have gone through the web suite. So this web suite is coming under web vulnerability scanners under Kali Linux. So this is another tools available in the web application scanner like WhatWeb, WP Scan, WebSuite, Skipfish, SQL Map, NICT. All those tools are coming under web vulnerability scanners. And ZAP is another options. So in the pursuit, you might have exploring the proxy aspects also, like web proxy. So ZAP is another web proxy. So like that, multiple tools are there. So these tools, in where it is required, it is organized. Suppose if I want to analyze a web application in Kali Linux, what I can do is that I'll go to web application analysis option, then go for web application scanners. What are the scanners available? Select it and do this, give the target. It will provide the information. So this is as simple as that. So otherwise, what we have to do is that we have to check it Burpsuite where it is available. Suppose if we are using a Ubuntu, Burpsuite is not a default application there. So we have to go to the Burpsuite site and download it, configure it. All those tags are removed in this Kali Linux because everything is coming inbuilt as a bundle. Okay, so now I'll go through the basics of Wireshark. That is what the today's discussion mainly we are looking to that. So I'll just give the demo of that. So then we'll discuss some of the other aspects of these things. So in this Wireshark, you can see it is a network scanning, what you call traffic analysis tool. So it can come under sniffing tool. Basically, what sniffing is means that once we are connecting to a network, everything is going through the cable or a wireless scenario. From my machine, if I connect to the CDAC network, it will go through the cable. At present, I connected through a wireless, so it will go through the wireless traffic. So that traffic, if somebody want to capture or somebody want to monitor, then basically we'll call it as a sniffing, network sniffing or traffic sniffing. So Wireshark is one tool which can be used for sniffing. It will capture the network packet, and as you know, the network packet will consist of multiple layers, and the information is packed in there, and different layers like physical data link, network, transport, then session, presentation, application. All those layers are informations are distributed. Then finally, our message will be there in the application traffic. So those information we can see using Wiresharks. So it's a multiple use. One thing like I can see what are the traffic I'm getting or what are the traffic I'm sending to outside. So this is one basic use case. And second thing, you just assuming a network administrator is facing some issue like people are complaining like my network is slow. Then we can analyze the traffic using this type of tool like sniffers. Wireshark is one example. So we can analyze it and check it. What is the reason and what type of traffic we are getting and what is the size of those packets. Whether these traffics are useful traffic or unwanted traffic. Those type of diagnosis part we can analyze and understand using Wireshark. And on top of that, if you want to understand the protocol part, for example, if somebody is taking a network sessions, different layers, what is the header information available and how it is distributed, those things in practical we can see using Wireshark. So these are the different use cases. And another advantage, like suppose you assume that your network is affected with some attacks, and later point of view we identify some attack is happened, and you can just collect the network traffic. You assume that you have a network traffic dump as an input, then this can be used for a network forensics tool as well. So we'll provide this entire network dump to the Wireshark, and it will provide what are the communications happened, what time, how it is happened, all those information it will provide. So we'll get to know like what is the reason for those attacks or those things. So that is mainly post attacks. So that will coming under forensics. So Wireshark can be used as a network forensic tool as well. So I'm just going to explain the Wireshark in the present live traffic capturing. So either you can use Wireshark from that sniffing tools, okay, sniffing and spoofing tool Wireshark is there, or you can give from the terminal itself. But while giving it from the terminal, we should be a root user. The reason is that basically the Wireshark or any sniffing tool, it's capturing the network traffic. So network traffic capturing and decoding, basically it is a operating system functionality like the network TCP/IP stack has to do that. And to do that capturing and analysis, its operating system, what you call the privilege is required. It's not like a normal user privilege. So we should provide as a root user. So the tools which using the sniffing like Wireshark or TCP dump, any tool, basically they require a root privilege to capture the traffic. So we should be root, then you can give Wireshark. Okay. So this is the Wireshark interface. You can see interface coming now. So first it will ask using this filter and what are the interface available, and you can go check into this option where we'll configure the capture option, because our interest is to collect the traffic to the network interface or wireless interface. So we want to provide what is the interface available and which interface you want to collect. You can give any. So suppose in your machine, wireless interface is there as well as connected network cable is there like Ethernet cable. Then you can give any, or you want to give a specific thing, so you can give specific interface. At present, I am selecting any because I'm using wireless interface for getting the traffic. I just give any, then give the start button. Okay, so this should capture the traffic coming to my machine now. So for that, I can generate some traffic. Okay. So we'll check it, some traffic. I'm using the browser available in Kali Linux. Okay. So while I'm accessing the network traffic, you can see this window is also moving. That means whatever traffic we are getting, Wireshark is able to identify it and it's displaying. Okay. So this is one use case in the live traffic monitoring. So if I select another sites, for example, google.com, and you can see the traffic coming. Okay, so it's depend on the traffic which you are collecting. If it is a HTTP traffic or web traffic, you will get HTTP. Otherwise, you will get the corresponding traffic like DNS or mail, whatever it is. Okay, so now this tool I am using as a live monitoring tool, where we'll able to get the details. So one option is that if I keeping on running this, the new data will be updated. You can see here how many packets it's captured, how many packets it's displayed. Sometimes if you have a what do you call it, high speed network, it might not be able to capture entire traffic. So you'll get some displayed or drop information also. So here you can see live capture in progress. So I'm just dropping this. So here is a button. So then it will have a display. We can analyze the packets which is already captured. So now live capturing is not there because I stopped the live capturing. But whatever the traffic captured, it is still available now. Okay. And this case you can see here there is a filter option, apply display filter. I'll explain what it is. Then once I selected one single line, the details are printing here. Okay. We'll explain what this means. You already know, but I'll just explain with the header information, TCP IP header information. Then we'll check it is the traffic is as per the standard of TCP or IP. Okay. So this is the first part. We'll check it. Okay, here the field it's mentioning first is the packet number, then a timestamp. The source is nothing but source IP, then destination IP, which protocol it is, and what is the length, and some information. This can be customized, but by default it will provide timestamp, source, destination IP address, and protocol field. So we'll check it what exactly this one. Okay, so for checking that, we'll just go to the basics of this TCP IP header. 1 minute. Okay, so this is the IP header. IP header. You can see there is a version, then IP header length, type of service, total length, identification, and all. And we are more interested on source IP and destination IP. I'm not going to explain all those things because version, let's just mention what version of this IP packet it is. So the present you can see here version 4 is there for IPv4. Nowadays because of this IPv6 and all, you may get some traffic with version 6 as well. Then what is the header length? What is the type of service? Then what is the total length of this IP packet, identification number, and if the packet is fragmented, like the bits will be set more fragmented, defragmented, all those things. Then time to live, how many hops it can pass to avoid this what you call looping. And the protocol field, it will say what is the above layer protocol. For example, this is in the IP layer. Above layer can be TCP or UDP, or in some case ICMP also, because ICMP is just above the IP layer. So it need not be TCP UDP. It can be ICMP or it can be SCTP or similar protocols. So while reading this protocol field, we'll get to know what is the above layer protocol. So the decoding can be happen according to that. And the checksum for understanding the packet, whether it is correct or not. Then source address, destination address. This is the typical IP address, source and destination IP address. And the protocol field, you can see the number, like number 1 for ICMP, then number 6 for TCP, and number 7 for UDP. Now we'll going to check these fields in the Wireshark because it is captured the packet, and we'll check the IP header and whether it is matching or not. Okay. So I'm selecting one row where it will see the TCP. For example, you can see here TCP. So TCP, it's on top of the IP. So first is the Ethernet frame, then IP layer, then transport layer. So Ethernet frame, it is layer 2. You can see all the MAC address, all those things are in the layer 2. So you can see here. It is more related to layer 2 details. Okay. Now we'll check in the layer 3. It is a IP. So we already saw the IP address header. So IP packet header. So you can see the version is 4. That's nothing but the version what we saw in the IP header, like this one. Sorry, this field. So this field is part of the IP header, and there is a value for version. If it is 4, then it is IPv4. So in our traffic, we'll check it. What is the version? You can see here, it is version 4. Then what is the header length, service, differentiated service, and all.
Hello,
Flag
sir.
value, as you know. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm actually seeing only Kali Linux PPT, and we are not able to see the Wireshark.
Wireshark, you are not able to see.
Yeah, now I am able to see it. Thank you.
Okay. So I think if you are facing an issue, you can just notify. Otherwise, I'm not able to verify. Now, since I am out of this team window, I'm just explaining this Kali Linux window only. Okay. If you are not able to see, just interrupt and give that feedback. Okay. Okay, so you'll be able to see the IP header information, like what is the version, what is the size of this IP header and all. And another information what we saw in the IP header is that what is the protocol field. So as you see here, protocol is number is 6 and it is mapped into TCP. But in the actual packet, if you're seeing, you will see only this corresponding what you call entry in binary. And Wireshark is providing some what you call readable option or human readable option, and that's what it is adding more information. Like it should be only 6, but here it is added as a TCP, and you can see here don't fragment all those details also it is providing. Then another information what it will provide is the source and destination IP. So you can see source IP is this one, destination IP is this one. So once you map this information into the IP header, it's same. Like whatever IP header is supposed to provide, all those things providing in the practical aspects, and we are able to capture that, we are able to decode it. And that is what Wireshark is doing. Wireshark will capture the packet and it will decode and it will provide that information. So then once the IP address, IP header is over, it will have a above layer like TCP. So in the TCP, I'll just go through the TCP header information. So TCP header, you can see first 16 bit will be source port and next one is destination port. And as you are aware, that TCP is a what you call it, it's a sequence number and it's an acknowledgement number. It's a reliable communication we are using. If anything is missing, it will be able to track. So sequence number and acknowledgement number will be there. So then there are some reserved fields. As you are aware, there are TCP flags like pin flag, SYN flag, reset, push, acknowledgement, urgent. Then these two are reserved things. And TCP for a flow control, there is a window options also available. and checksum it's available, and urgent pointer is available. Then options fields are available. Now, if you are decoding the TCP header using Wireshark, we should be able to see up to this point. If the traffic is TCP is not added option, we will be able to see up to checksum and urgent pointer. If it is an option field, option details also will be there. So we will be able to see what is the source port from the TCP, destination port, all those details. Okay, so I'm just selecting TCP protocol. You can see the source port, destination port. Then next one is sequence fields, and there is a sequence number, acknowledgement number. All those things are available. And you can see here sequence number is 1, and it is mentioning relative sequence number. So that what it means, it is not exactly 1. And for this, what you call Wireshark, for a human easiness, it's providing this sequence number as 1, but it is not exactly 1. It is a relative sequence number. So if you want to see the actual sequence number, there is an options available. So we have to go to edit and preference, and there is a protocol field. Here we have to select TCP because it's customized. Most of the things it's customized. By default, whatever we saw from the network traffic, it is providing a more human-friendly input or what in the GUI. So I'll just go to the TCP now. So there are some options available. So if you enable that, then we'll get the real values. It's okay. You can see here shows TCP summary in protocol field and allow subdirectory, analyze TCP sequence number. Okay, so these I disabled relative sequence number. Okay, so if I enable this, that is what we are getting 1. It is not actually 1. Okay, so now if I click it OK, we can see the difference. You will see a big number here. Okay, so this is actual sequence number, but previously what happened means to our easiness, it's providing this particular packet is sequence 1, next packet is sequence 2, like that. This is the actual number. Okay, so sequence number you can see, then acknowledgement number you can see here. Okay, so what is the next sequence number it is expecting, all those things you can verify. So in the traffic which is traveling through the network, actual information is passing like this in bits format, but Wireshark is providing its own decoded information, and that is useful for a human being to understand and verify very easily. Okay. Then flag value we can see acknowledgement flag is enabled. What is the window size? Okay, then these are the other information providing like window scaling factor, urgent pointer, and all. So as we saw that this one TCP options field, this option field is not available in that particular packet. So this is one example, like how will you decode the packet and how will you understand the protocol information using Wireshark. Previously, we saw how will you capture the traffic using Wireshark. Okay. Now, a lot of other statistics are available or analysis options are available in Wireshark. Okay. So here you can see the statistics like how many packets are captured and what are the protocol hierarchy. You can see here. Okay. So all are Ethernet packet. After that, 97% is TCP. After that, TCP around 26% is going to a encrypted traffic using TLS. Then some portion is going as HTTP traffic. Like this, whatever captured traffic in this present scenario, it is showing like this. Okay, so this can be useful for a protocol analysis and understanding, like which application or which port it is using more, what is the size of the packets, whether it is as per the standard, like that we can analyze. Okay, so in TCP case, we already saw like most of the traffics are going to TCP, and what are the other traffic? UDP is coming around 2.2%, And over the UDP traffic, what I captured is DNS. So DNS is passing through a UDP traffic. Okay, like this you will be able to get it. And there is a TLS traffic around 26.900. This much packet it's captured, like 2685 packets it's captured. Out of that 2627 packet it is mapped into TCP. And these are the number of bytes captured. So you can map into that. It's around 3 MB. Okay, like 3247 KB. If I simply divide by 1000, then 3.2 MB traffic I captured from the TCP. Like that, we'll get it. The next one is the bit per second. It will give the speed also. Okay, 247 kbps. Okay, these one options. N packet, N bytes, on N bits per second. This information, like that, some statistics it will provide. So this will be useful if you are feeling like your network is slow. You can just run for Wireshark for some time, then check it what traffic it is coming more, and then you can analyze whether the traffic is really required traffic or not. If somebody is sending a junk traffic or unwanted traffic and all, we can easily identify it. So protocol hierarchy we identify. Then conversation means what are the communication happening from one IP to another IP. Okay, so here you can see 10.0.2.15 is communicating to 10.182.0.11, 58 packet it is sending. And this is what we called an IP which is communicated more. Like this is my machine 2.15, 196, 1.113.45. So this is a CDAC IP. You might have remembering when I started Wireshark, I parallelly connected www.cdac.in. So once I access that web page, the data is also coming. So that is what that particular point of time I'm getting more traffic from that particular IP address. Okay, and this much packet it is transferred, all those things. Then from the A to B means source A, destination B, how many packets, reverse traffic, how many bytes. Sometimes it may be one packet, but number of bytes may be more. That also some concerns. Like if you have you might have seen very less number of packets transferring, but the volume of that packet or the what you call the packet is fully packed. So that type of information we'll get to know what is the packet size. Okay, and bytes and start time, duration, all those things are providing. So this type of conversations summary will be very useful. For example, here itself we can see which IPs are communicating more time. So duration is one field. And here you can see which are the IPs they are using more traffic or they are doing more data transfer. Those type of information we will able to see. Okay. So this one conversation, I'm taking IPv4. If I take IPv6, since there is no IPv6 traffic, it's 0 now. And these are TCP related and these are UDP related. Okay. So this one feature it may be useful like statistics. Then from the end point, I'm not worried about A to B. I'm worried about a particular IP address. So that information will provide here. So this IP, this is my IP. So it is getting more packets. So from where to this IP is not provided here. If you want to get to whom all are these IP is communicating, you have to take the conversation points. Okay, IPv4 then TCP and all. So this from individual IP point of view. This will be useful if you are suspecting some particular IPs are malicious. Okay. Then later you can check it in what reason, which are the IPs it is communicating. Conversation will give that details. So like this one statistics options, then conversation endpoint we understood, packet length you can see. So this provides statistics like what are the distribution of the packet size. For example, you can see here up to 0 to 40, you can see there is no packet transfer. And from 40 onwards, there are some packets transferred. And in this case, most of the packets are within 40 to 80 range. Okay. So why it is not transferring any packets in this range? The reason is that If you're considering IP header, it is minimum, it should be 20 byte. And on top of that, TCP header is also there, it will add 20 bytes. So 40 byte is the by default minimum. And if you're getting a packet less than that, then like it either only IP packets or less than that. Okay. So since in our case, it's our TCP as well as UDP, so it's coming into this range. And there are some application traffic. Some traffic is greater than this one. We will call it as a jumbo packet and all. So some portion of the traffic is coming to that. Okay. So these are another statistics may be interested. Then IO graph. It will provide the graph based on different analysis like bar chart, and this one you can use it. You can provide a interval also here. Okay. So like this, you can add some your own what you call the filters. Okay, I want to get only TCP from this IP and all those type of filters also you can provide. So then statistics part, I think it's almost over. Okay, then if you want to do a specific analysis, you can get it from protocol. Like I'm taking HTTP packet counter, it will provide. Okay. Total HTTP packet, what is the erase packet, like you already know what is the means number for node 4, 3, node 2, like that. So these are the HTTP response number. So how many packets are with the specific response number we will be able to get. If I'm selecting only HTTP at this particular point, based on that separate different protocol, we will get that information. Okay, then IPv4 statistics, IP6 statistics, all those information you will be able to get. So this is one interesting features, like from the analysis point of view, statistics things. Then I'll give one example in this TCP how we will be able to analyze the TCP traffic. For example, as you know, TCP will say it is connection oriented. There is a connection establishment process and data transfer process and connection release process. So connection establishment process, we will call it as three-way handshake, where first the client will send a packet to the server, or server will acknowledge it, and again the client will get that acknowledgement packet and another sequence packet, it will acknowledge to the server. So this way, both way communication will be established in the three-way handshake. So if you want to see the three-way handshake, it is happening in the TCP. We can do a filter on Wireshark. So I'll just give TCP. So it will do a TCP filter. Okay. So TCP traffic filter is done. So now it will show only the TCP traffics. Okay, so if I remove this one, you will be able to get multiple traffic. For example, protocol, other traffics also there, like DNS, all those things, UDP, all those things are there. So now a specific scenario you can do like if I do a UDP, then UDP, only UDP traffic it will get, like a DNS part and all. Okay. Here you can give a TCP or IP. IP in this case, almost all traffic will come because UDP as well as TCP is part of IP, on top of IP. Or if you want to do the TCP, you can give a TCP. And this particular text box is known as display filter. What it means is that Wireshark is captured the traffic, but it will display only the traffic, only the packets which based on this filter. Otherwise, traffic is already there, but for a display purpose, it is collecting only the filter information. You can see here, if I put a filter, display filter on TCP, total packet 2685, but a displayed packet only 2625. So remaining packet is not TCP. So it may be UDP. Here you can see UDP total packet is same, but displayed packet is 58. The reason is that we put a display filter here. Okay, so I put a TCP display filter, so it will do only TCP traffic. Okay, so then if you want to see the three-way handshake, we'll take the first packet. Okay, so I'm taking packet number 3. Okay, so this is the first packet in TCP. You can see here, just expand that. So since we are discussing about only TCP, I'm taking the TCP portion, and as we already know, since it is a three-way handshake first packet, the packet should be enabled with the SYN flag. Okay, so that's what we'll simply call SYN packet. So actually it is a TCP packet with the SYN enabled. So we have selected the TCP packet, then SYN it will come in the flag field. Okay, so flag field you can see the SYN packet. So that means it is a synchronization packet. You can see send from 10.0.2.15, that is a client, and it is sent to 104 to 26 10.240, that is a server. Okay, and client is requested a SYN packet or synchronization request sent to the server using SYN packet, TCP packet with the SYN enabled. Now we will check what is the sequence number of that. Okay, so the sequence number is 709047 536. Okay, and the next sequence number is also same, because here there is no next sequence number. Acknowledgement number is 0, it's first packet it is sending. Now we will see the second packet. So packet number 4 here. Second packet, you can see the source and destination is reversed. The reason is that first client sent a request to the server, and the second packet is the response from the server. Okay. So in the response from the server, server is initiating and client is the destination. That's what the source IP, server IP. Destination IP is 2.15. That is not, that is exactly matching with the client IP in the previous packet. So 2.15 is the destination. Now one difference is that initial packet client is sending a SYN. So as per the theory, it should send a response packet, acknowledgement packet, along with its own SYN packet. Okay, so that's what the second packet is coming. We'll call it as a SYN ACK. Okay, in SYN ACK, SYN flag and ACK flag is enabled. Okay, so now the difference is that you can see this sequence number, okay, and acknowledgement number. So the previous sequence number was 536 sent by the client. Now you can see the acknowledgement number is 537. That is one incremental. That means your server is still mentioning, I got your packet with the sequence number 536. Means I'm mentioning only the last three digit 536. And this is the acknowledgement for that. So that's what it is mentioning 537. Okay. And this is my sequence number. So that is nothing but 8001. So now if the client is responding back, then the third packet will mention that client is responding because the IP address is 15 and this destination IP is 240 and it is responding with an acknowledgement. And what is the acknowledgement number you can see here? So it is matching 8001 was the sequence number from the server and 8002 was the 2 is the sequence number from the client. So that means client is acknowledging the server like I received your packet with the sequence number 8001 and this is the acknowledgement for that. And next sequence number will be 537. Then after three-way handshake,
Sir,
since it, yes.
sir, how to identify if some of the packets are being sniffed?
These are the sniffed packets. Okay, so if I interpret your question like now I am collecting the traffic from my network, correct? Or my
Yes.
laptop. Okay. So you think about a context like I am a network administrator. Students network traffic is going on. I want to monitor that traffic. Okay.
Yes, or else you want to sniff some of the packets while
Yes.
delivering to the destination.
Yes, exactly. So in that context, what will happen means in your interface there is a settings called promiscuous mode. Okay, I just show in the Linux. So in
So
Linux,
come again, sir.
1 minute. I'll explain with means the terminal. You will get the details. Okay. So normally what will happen means whenever we are capturing a traffic, the packet destined to our machine only we can capture. Okay, even though if you're a root user, the packet going to other machine which is in the same network, we are not able to capture. Then the question is that how the network monitoring tools are working or how the intrusion detection systems are working, because they are only one machine. They will not have a multiple IP address. So still they are going to get all the traffic. Okay. So the reason is that if you check this command, if config, there is an option called promiscuous mode. Okay. So you can set your IP into a promiscuous mode. What it means that if you are in promiscuous mode, you will be able to get the traffic from other whatever traffic passing through the channel. Okay, it's not only destined to your machine, whatever the traffic passing through the channel also you will be able to get it. So this is what normally all these network monitoring tools are set. They will set the interface into a promiscuous mode. So then there is a chance that they will be able to get the traffic. Okay, but that is in theory.
Okay.
But in the practical aspects, if you and this device is replaced with an older device called hub. So the reason is that if you are using a hub, like I have a 8 machine in my lab, I am connecting all those machines through wire into the hub, and that hub is connected to the router or other switch, whatever it is. Okay. So if I connect in that way, what means all the traffic going to the hub, it will broadcast. So if I want to get the traffic from hub for other traffic, other machines traffic, it is possible. So I will connect one cable and that cable I will to network tool, connect that finally into a hub, and all the students machine will be in the connected into the hub. So whatever they're communicating will getting us since it is a broadcast. But nowadays that will not be possible because we are replacing the hub with a switch. And switch, the difference is that it is an intelligent device. For example, in a switch, 10 machines are connected and machine 1 is communicated to machine 8. Then only machine 8 can be get the traffic. Even though if I am in a switch, I cannot get the traffic in the sniffer mode also, even if I am in sniffing mode also or promiscuous mode also. So this is the advantage usually switch is providing over to the hub. So hub will be, if you are simply connected to hub, you will get all the traffic, but in switch that is not possible. But still the question is that how the present day network monitoring tools are working, because most of the time they will connect to a switch only. Okay, so if a switch have a 12 port and I am connecting one port of the switch into my network monitoring tool. So whatever traffic destined to the network monitoring tool only I will be able to get it. Whatever the traffic going from machine 1 to machine 2, I will not be able to get it. Even if I am setting my interface as a promiscuous mode. So to overcome that issue, nowadays what happened means there is a special configuration in switch. It is known as a span port or mirror port. So one specific port we can configure as a mirror port or span port.
Can you show it, sir? Span port.
That case I required a switch device, ma'am. Okay, so
Picture
now
you
I
can
connected.
show.
Yeah. Using switch only,
You
I can
can show
show
the
that
picture
promise
how.
case thing. At present, I don't have
Using
any access to
picture.
this. Okay, okay. Okay, just a minute, ma'am. Suppose this is our switch, okay? It's our multiple ports. So this switch may have multiple ports. So port 1, port 2, so I'm connecting 4 machine into a switch. Okay, so here assume that I'm connecting a machine now. So this is the machine which I'm connecting. So while connecting, I connect to this switch, and you can assume this is our lab. Okay, so in this lab, multiple machines are there. These machines I am connecting. So once I connected, the traffic from this machine to this machine will pass through the switch. But assume that in this, I'm connecting my network monitoring tool. So you can call it as NMS. So I'll use different symbol there. So this is my NMS. Okay. Network monitoring system. So as part of this NMS, it should be able to capture the traffic from this machine to this machine, because that is the basic purpose of that. It has to monitor the traffic going through the switch or network. But if these two machines are communicating, then there is a switch table, and switch table will transfer only to this particular port. This is a normal communication. So this device will not be able to get the traffic. It will pass from here to here directly using the switch table. Okay, so NMS, even though if it is connected to the same switch and it is configured with the promise case mode, still it will not be able to get that traffic. So what the present scenario people are doing is that they will configure this NMS machines port as a mirror port or span port. So I'll just put here it as a span port. Okay, so this is a mirror port. So what it will do is that whatever communication happening in the switch, it will have a copy. It will get a copy. Okay, so previously it is sending from this machine to this machine directly, and this port is not mirror port or span port at that time. I will configure it as a span port, so the copy of the packet span port will get. So suppose now between these two machines another communication, and one copy will go to the span port. So now practically what I did is that all the traffic in the switch, one copy is going to the span port, and our NMS or intrusion detection system, whatever network monitoring tool we are connecting, that will connect to the span port. So practically what we are achieved, all the traffic passing through the switch, we will be able to get a copy. And remember, this just a copy, we cannot take any action as such. Suppose if we want to drop a packet, we cannot drop the packet between A to B, because one copy only we are getting. So that is what it is known as mirrored port or span port. So once we are connecting a network monitoring system or NMS or any similar tool like intrusion detection system or any traffic analysis tools in the switched environment, this is one mandatory requirement. We have to enable a span port, On top of that, this machine which is connected to the span port, it should be the interface should be in promiscuous mode. So then the advantage is that whatever traffic not destined to this machine, still it is able to collect. So that is the practical aspects of span port or mirror port, how we are going to the NMS. Okay, so if you are using Wireshark in a switched environment or LAN environment and you want to get the traffic from the switch, ensure that that switch have a mirrored port and your interface which you are collecting it should it's a promiscuous mode. Okay, so this is the requirement in the mounting system. Okay. I hope it is clear now. So we'll move into the TCP part. Okay. So once Wireshark is done, we'll able to get the three-way handshake details from TCP, like as I mentioned, sequence number. It should match with acknowledgement number coming from the other side, and the acknowledgement number from the third packet in the three-way handshake should match with the previous packet's sequence number. Okay. Now I will show one example how we can use this Wireshark for a traffic analysis or forensics aspects. Okay, so there is an option here, file, and you can open a existing dump also. Dump means, okay, I'll just do one example. Here I stop that traffic after some time of the live connection. Then what I can do is that I can save it as a dump. Okay, save as or save, simply give save. You can see multiple options here. There is an option called PCAP NG. PCAP is a normal terminology we'll use, packet capturing. So NG means next generation and PCAP, dot PCAP. Okay. So I'll just give a demo dump. This is the file I am going to store it. And in this file, we are storing a network traffic. So the extension will be PCAP or PCAP NG. Okay, so Wireshark will store that as a PCAP NG format. So later point, any sniffing tool, you can provide this input file for a forensic purpose or a offline analysis. Okay, so now similar way I'm doing now, I'm opening a already existing dump. I already stored one dump in my desktop, so traffic dump. So I just use it as a telnet. This I downloaded from Wireshark site. Okay. So as you know, the telnet was initially we are using for remote login. So in that remote login, if you want to connect your machine which is outside from your machine to other machine in the network, we will provide the credentials, okay, like username and password, all those things. And it is sending on top of the TCP. But there is an issue with the telnet at that time, like all the credential which is passing through the network, it is not encrypted. And this credential is nothing but our username and password. So if somebody is sniffing this traffic using the any sniffer tool, they will be able to identify what is the username and password. Okay, so we'll call it as a vulnerability. I think it's already explained what is vulnerability. There is a weakness in the telnet application. That weakness is nothing but it is sharing the credential as a plain text through the channel. And since the channel is open, anybody can access it or anybody can sniff it. So they will be able to identify username and password. And they later they can reuse it or they can misuse or they can on behalf of this user, they can use this credential. Many issues may arise because of that vulnerability. So to avoid that vulnerability, nowadays we are not using this telnet. We are using a similar application which is secured compared to TCP, or that vulnerability is not there. It is known as SSH, secure shell. So application point of view, both are safe. Both will provide remote login. But SSH, what it will provide is that it will encrypt this username and password, and it will send through a channel. So since it is encrypted, if somebody is sniffing the traffic they will not be able to identify what is the credential because it is encrypted using a key. So without that key, decryption is not possible. So this is the one advantage where people will say, like compared to Telnet, SSH is more secure. More secure in the sense the vulnerability which is related to the plain text transferring of the data through the channel is not there. That doesn't mean SSH is fully secure. Because if you're discussing the vulnerability point of view, vulnerability or weakness present in the system can be anywhere. It can be in design, it can be in development, it can be in testing, it can be in the deployment. Finally, it can be the human being who is operating that. That is what we'll say the weakest link is always the human being. So simple example, you may instruct the students use your strong password and all. Still they put root 123 as the password. It's not about the design or development of the system. It is a weakness who is operating that. So that is a human being weakness. So this is applicable to anywhere. You can install n number of device in organization. It will provide all the security, but the person who is operating it is not taken care of the proper security of that. He is not following the proper procedure. He himself is revealing these details. Then there is no point to the other security aspects. Okay, so same way, Telnet have an issue. It is sending this information in the plain text, and SSH replace that vulnerability or patch that vulnerability with encrypted traffic. That doesn't mean SSH is not vulnerable. SSH have its own vulnerability, and it is revealed in multiple times. Okay, like SSH, even if it is using an encryption library, OpenSSL, that library itself was vulnerable. Means through that vulnerability, somebody can exploit SSH also. So this is a common strategy, or what you call common things in any security things. You cannot say it's fully secure. If any small vulnerability is there, I cannot say small vulnerability. Vulnerability is vulnerability. If any vulnerability is there, somebody will exploit it any point of time. So this is the actual things. So in the telnet, we'll check it how we can see this credential. There is an option in Wireshark. We can follow the stream. So I just take one line. So I take a TCP. First line I have taken it. Then right click it. So there is an option for follow. Since it is a TCP, it will get it a TCP follow. Okay. Now I opened a telnet dump. Okay. So since it is a telnet dump, it should have a remote login connection, all those information. You can see here, initially some telnet information is passing. Then it is asking for login. User is typed something. There is a password. Okay. So here the login name is fake and password is user. How we got it? We got this stream. Okay. That TCP telnet stream. And in that telnet stream, we follow that. So follow means it's nothing but all the client server communication will be provided in a human readable form. So I select one options, then follow TCP stream. It will reveal that. So you can see in different color, one from client to server and another from client server to client. So entire communication. This is the communication from client to server. Sorry, this is communication from server to client because the port number is 23 in the source side. Okay, so usually standard port will be used by server. And you can see the reverse one. It is using port number 1254 and destination port is 23. So we can analyze the traffic using a Wireshark. This is one example. You can follow the TCP stream and we can check it. What was the communication happened? So here you can see username they typed it, password they typed it, then they got the terminal. Once you connect to SSL and all, open SSH and all, you will get the terminal information, some basic information it will print. So that's what this one. Then after that is pinging, okay, and you got this information. So basically we'll be able to track all the communication between those two machines using telnet. This is not possible in case of SSH because that credential will not be able to see since it is encrypted. Okay, so this is one use case. I hope I explained the TCP handshake, all those things. Now we'll go through another simple example. Like I'm just restarting Wireshark. You already know the use case of ping command. Okay. So here I'm connecting interface, and in my terminal I'm executing a command. Okay. So if I do the pinging, you can see some traffics are going. As you already know, ping using a ICMP request and reply. Okay. So those things we can verify now. What is happening means it is sending a ping request. Now my machine is 2.15. You can see here. I send the request to the other machine. Destination IP is 20. So we studied like ping is using ICMP request. So here you can see protocol is ICMP and echo request it is sending. Now we'll see where ICMP is fit. So we'll check IP, version for all those things are there. Protocol field we can check. Protocol is 1. As we saw in the slides, protocol 1 is mapping to ICMP. Then ICMP echo request is going there. So you can see here echo request. So ICMP have a field called type. So I'll expand the ICMP. ICMP, you can see echo request is type 8, code is 0. Now, since that machine is not there, it is not responded back. So only one side traffic it is going. So what I can do is that I'll send the same ping request to the same machine itself. Then we'll get some traffic as well, response as well. So I'll just check it. What is my machine's IP address? So this machine's IP is 2.15. So I'm just pinging to that machine itself. .0.2.15. So now you can see there are some response also coming from that machine, because same machine we are doing that. Now we'll check it in Wireshark. You can see here both is reflecting like echo request and reply. So I'm sending a request to same machine is replying, and echo request we saw that type and code 8 and 0. Now echo reply it is 0 and 0. Okay, echo reply 0 and 0. So this is what basically happened when we are doing the pinging. Like that, other commands you can execute like trace route, all those things. Okay. So basically we can verify what are the communications happening in different machines, what protocol they are using, and what is the protocol, what you call that, functionality. All those things we can analyze using Wireshark. I think I'll just summarize the Wireshark things now. Is there any query related to that? Hello.
Hello, participant.
Is there any query related to Wireshark?
Please answer to the question. Are there any?
I didn't get any request there.
Yeah. No, but we have to know whether they are there or not. Hello.
Okay, okay. Okay, ma'am.
Hello.
Then, yeah, yes.
So one question.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, since you are running this Kali in virtual box,
Okay.
if you give some traffic through your Windows operating system for the same code through which it is passing,
Okay.
whether it will be showing in Wireshark.
Okay. So there is one catch there because I'm running in a virtual operating system. Okay. Okay. So if your primary interface is connecting to the base operating system, then we'll be able to see that. Hello.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll just show
So
to you.
can you share the web links through which we can
1 minute,
go?
ma'am.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am. 1 minute. I think still that ping request is going on. Sir, I think it's answer your questions because now I am browsing through the base operating system.
Okay.
So that is in Windows. Okay. So if I do this one, I'm opening Wireshark also in the Kali. I'm not able to get any TCP traffic.
Yeah.
So the reason is that while installing this virtual box, I'm not given full control of this base operating system.
Okay.
Okay. So this running as independent things.
Yeah. The virtualization something.
Yes, it's a visualization thing.
Thank you.
Okay. So I think time is less. Otherwise, I should just mention about one tool called Nmap. I think you already know that. I'll just demonstrate the features of Nmap. So it may be useful for you for patching, like what are the service running and how to stop that service. Okay. In your Kali Linux, we are going here in the information gathering as well as this one. It's there. Okay. There is a tool called Nmap or Zenmap. This is the tool. What it will do is that it will scan the network and identify what are the open ports available. And you can do a single machine as well as you can do a multiple machines. So I just give, okay, just open here. My IP base OS IP is 10.192.0.241. So I'll just do scanning on that machine. So I'll open Wireshark also. Wireshark is already running. Okay. So now you can see after the scanning my machine, it is giving some results. Okay, so this other than the results, I just want to explain the basic principle of scanning. So you can verify later in your machine also. So basic principle is that it will send a SYN packet, okay, and it will check what is the response. So you can see here, it will send a SYN packet, and if you are getting a reset packet, that means a closed port will send a reset packet. So your Wireshark will, Nmap will send the packet with the SYN request, and it will verify what is the response it is getting. If it is a reset packet, then it is assuming that that port is closed. If it is getting a SYN acknowledgement, like in the previous case we saw that SYN acknowledgement, then that application or that service is responding. So your Nmap will say one service is there. Okay, so like that, this is the basic principle of scanning. It will send a packet with a normal SYN request and verify what is the response it is getting, whether it is RST or SYN ACK. If it is a SYN ACK, it is an open port. If it is an RST, it is a closed port. Okay, so the advantage is that if it is an open port, then only you can try the remaining part, because our service is running, your connection request, it may take, so further things you can explore there. But if it is a closed port, it is like a closed door only. Nobody can enter, nobody can use that service to enter into your machine. So this is what typically we'll say, as part of hardening, first we will check what are the services running in our machine, and then we will verify all those services are required or not. If it is required, then only we will open that port, otherwise we will close that port. So indirectly what it means that you are shutting down all the unwanted services. That means you are trying to reduce the possibility of an attacker to come to your machines, since if you have multiple open ports, you can enter through any of these ports, and we are trying to reduce that. So this is one basic principle we are applying in the OS hardening or network hardening. First, understand what is the required port, then check it only those port is available. If extra ports are there, then you can close that service. So typically, if you are doing a base OS installation, there may be some ports by default will come. So we have to verify whether it is really required. If it is not required, we can close it.